Hello, everybody. I am Strati Papa Giorgio.
And I'm Father Michael Tischel.
And we are
An Imperfect Podcast.
Boom, boom. Cue music. I always feel weird after we do that and I play like somber religious music.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's right. So maybe this time you're not going to actually hear somber religious music.
Maybe it's going to be...
Might be Greek music.
Silence.
Like a 20-second silence.
Chirp, 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 chirp.
Yeah, or like people crickets. Crickets. After my badum then crickets.
Crickets.
We'll see. You'll see. You'll find out.
Yes.
It's all be hindsight.
That's
all right.
It's always 2020.
It is always 2020.
Yeah.
Unless you can't remember.
That's right. It's good to see you, Strati.
You too, Father.
Yep.
I hope you all enjoyed our last episode.
Me too.
And we're back.
We're back.
Father is leaving us for a little while.
Friday. Taking off. Heading out.
A few weeks.
Couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
One week is going to be at a conference. The other week will be with family. So
yeah,
we're going to be away for a little bit, but looking forward to the it's always nice to kind of disconnect and reconnect and whatever.
And when we come back, we'll actually have kind of a special episode.
Yes.
With a
gentleman.
With a gentleman that we have come into contact with who has an interesting story to tell us.
Yes.
About his, I think his conversion.
Yes.
Essentially.
Exactly.
To Orthodoxy, and that's kind of the first time we've done anything like that.
Right.
I know there are people online that do that already.
Right.
That's all they do almost, like interview people and how they came to Orthodoxy or.
But ours will be different.
Ours will be different
because it's going to be imperfect.
There's no doubt that it's going to be
Whereas
imperfect.
Everybody else has kind of honed their
100%,
craft and gotten it down to a science.
Everybody else is perfect.
Right. Ours
is going to be slightly off.
Oh, great. Oh. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to talk about today, Strati?
I don't know. No, I'm kidding. We're going to talk a little bit about anxiety.
Right.
And this is kind of it's always kind of like this. You tell me the night before.
Yeah.
Then I come and then we talk about it.
Yeah.
And you like it or you don't like it.
Exactly.
It's up to you.
That is up to you.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that one up to you.
So, yeah. So what about anxiety? I mean, I think it's a normal thing. Everybody has it to some extent.
Sure.
I don't know. Some people have it acutely, continuously.
Right.
Right? Like where they have a kind of an issue.
Yep.
And maybe they need to take medication for it or see somebody for it. Or you just, sometimes you're just anxious.
Right.
As a kid, you're anxious about the most...
Going to school or whatever.
Oh, before that, I was even going like, you're anxious about whether you're going to, I don't know, get a lollipop when you go to the doctor.
Yes.
Like, yeah. I actually, one of my earliest memories is that. Seriously, one of my earliest memories, I'm being held and I didn't get a lollipop.
Oh, man.
That was like maybe one or two.
Really?
Yeah, I remember.
Wow.
I remember and I was very anxious because I was going to get it and I didn't get it and I was very upset.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
So there's a range.
A 1-year-old can have it.
Absolutely.
Or a 2-year-old or however old I was.
Yep.
Maybe 3.
And without getting into the science of it too much, I mean, we know that it comes from this natural fight or flight kind of instinct, this sense of this kind of a dump of adrenaline rush that kind of gets released into our systems when there is a seeming perceived or real threat of some sort of danger. So,
like not getting a lollipop.
Like not getting a lollipop. That is a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Man, if your parents really knew how much danger they were putting you in when they brought you to the doctor's office. But yeah, so I mean, obviously the benefit of anxiety, even just from that perspective, is that it in the right context, it can alert us to danger. And it, hearkening back to one of our first episodes, I think when we talked about the I think it was about desire when we talked about the sort of the centrality of yearning for life,
Right.
and how like from the very beginning as humans, whether we're being threatened or whether we're just trying to live our lives,
Right.
we have this instinctual drive to live, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this is getting at that same instinct of
they go,
avoiding pain and avoiding kind of possible.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand, not hand in hand, but they're related.
Absolutely.
Desire. I have anxiety. I desire something, so I have anxiety that it won't happen.
Right. Yep. To get away from what would take it away from me, or
right, or to achieve it, you're anxious.
Yep.
So.
But a lot of people say that mental health struggles have been increasing in the last decade or so, and a lot more people struggle with anxiety, depression on a more kind of pathological or psychological level, and we're obviously not experts. We're not psychologists. We're talking about this on a very just kind of down to earth experiential level.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I came across this article that was entitled "The Gift of Anxiety," and I thought that would be an interesting thing just to chat about a little bit, because anybody who struggles with anxiety on any level, let alone on a really serious level, most of the time would never consider anxiety to be a gift. So how could you possibly consider it to be a gift?
Right.
And I think an interesting experiment in some ways is, before examining why it's a gift, I kind of think the point of that article was saying it's not really about examining why it's a gift, but it's actually about treating it as a gift before you even look at the why. And it's actually in examining this relationship that you have with your anxiety. So in other words, is it a relationship of enmity? Is it a relationship of servitude, where you are sort of enslaved to this, you're like an indentured servant or a slave to this anxiety? Is it a relationship of, abuse, where you're being abused by this anxiety? Or is this anxiety a gift that you're receiving with the same sense of gratitude and the same sense of and it's a weird thing to even.
I think that but that I think that's interesting, because you read a lot of the the lives of the saints and whatnot, where they discuss I don't know, you turn everything into praise for God, right?
Right.
So it reminds me of Moses, where he had, Moses the Ethiopian,
right,
the thief or whatever.
Yep.
And he had lived a very not the cleanest life, right? So he decided to become a monk, after having done so many bad things. And in the story, because we have a video on it. And in the story, it says that he couldn't be in a cell because of the
temptations.
The sort of the thoughts of fornication kept attacking him.
Right.
Right. And then they his elder said, would tell him to go back to his cell, and he'd go, "No, I can't." So he took him to the roof, and I think that anxiety led him to this moment where the elder took him to the roof of the monastery and said, it was like about morning, so he goes, "Look at the sunrise. Look how long it's taking." I'm paraphrasing all this. Well, just like how long it takes for, the darkness does not go away instantly. It slowly is defeated. But there was also another one as well where he told him to look to the west, and in the west he saw hordes of demons. And then he said, "Look to the east," and he saw hordes. He saw legions of angels.
Right.
And I think that I think that in the discussion about anxiety, people who have a heightened sense of anxiety, and not just anxiety, depression, or whatever, I think it's always good to remember that there's so many more on our side. There are legions on our side as opposed to the demons that are against us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where I think it can be a very frustrating experience because, at least in many cases, it feels like maybe it feels like you've made sort of an inch of progress, right? And then you get hit by, a panic attack or some sort of intense kind of anxiety attack, and you feel like you've just gone backwards like 1,000 feet. And,
and I think that's how he felt.
Right.
That's how he felt.
Sure. Yep. But to kind of have that perspective of the mercy of God.
Yeah, and that, okay, so there's some demons over there. Look over there at the myriad of people of bodiless powers on your side. So
no, that's good.
That's really profound. Really, because as I continue to live through life, and I meet more and more people who are broken or have not broken. We're all broke. We all have our cross to whatever degree.
Right.
But I just keep meeting more and more just people, getting to know them, and I told somebody recently, I told them two things. Know that you're the great. You're not the greatest sin you've ever committed. So that was very. We had that.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Very helpful from.
Yeah.
And that no matter what, this kind of leaves the topic of anxiety, although it doesn't, because all these topics that we've ever covered, I think, are all related.
Sure.
Being anxious, depression, or whatever.
Yep.
I told them that you have a God who became a human and actually was anxious.
Yeah. Agonia.
Agonia.
In the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah. Yeah. He was anxious about what was about to come.
Sure.
And he sweated, and he sweat blood. He sweated.
Yeah.
Sweat.
I know. I never know.
Forget it.
Yeah. Sweet.
Sweet. Blood came out of his pores, which actually I read somewhere that's a real thing.
Wow.
Not that they made it up, but I mean, it wasn't just an extreme thing. It was actually a real thing that could happen during anxiety in certain circumstances.
Yep.
So anxiety is normal.
Right.
Even intense anxiety.
That is good. Yeah.
I guess my point is, don't feel like you're alone if you do have that problem.
Sure.
Don't ever feel like you're alone.
Right.
I think that's my contribution to all this.
No, that's very good. That's very good. It's normal. It's a common human experience. Even if Christ Himself.
Even if it's an extreme version of it, it's okay.
Right.
Like, you will be okay.
Yeah.
Take the measures you need to take.
Right.
Yep. And you're not dirty or.
Right.
Or
this kind of exotic specimen or something.
Or especially not that.
Right.
Because how many billions of people are there?
Exactly.
Going through all sorts of things.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, I think those are good.
But what about the gift, though?
Right. So the gift aspect is interesting because there's this question of, again, our relationship with anxiety. Is it something we just cope with, we deal with, we're sort of burdened by, but at times it kind of, or can we see it as a gift? Can we see it as something that has been given to us for a reason, not necessarily to figure that reason out, overnight or anything, but to kind of see that maybe there is something in this experience that is a benefit.
Sure.
And before we even get to that specific gift, how could we possibly consider any painful experience to be a gift?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important question. And I mean, I think we can look at it on different levels and different experiences in life. I mean, for example, exercise. There's a good example of something that, in a small way is painful, but is a gift insofar as it
Mm-hmm.
gets us to a different kind of state of health. Really, I mean, the phenomena of pain and pleasure are really interesting when you think about them, because, and I think we did touch on this a little bit with our desire podcast, but it's not as straightforward as you think, right? Like, we'd like to think that every pleasurable experience is good and every painful experience is bad.
Right.
But that's just not the case.
No.
I mean, we know that, and it's not even a matter of identifying it as good or bad. It's identifying it as how much pleasure versus how much pain, right? In other words, an experience that's going to give you just, a shot of pleasure, right?
Drugs.
Right, something like that, is ultimately going to give you a lifetime of pain, right? I mean, an experience that's going to give you a little bit of pain could give you a lifetime of pleasure. So it's not even a matter of identifying whether it's good or bad, because ultimately, pleasure is good.
Yeah.
Right? I think we can say something sort of radical about pleasure, which is really what, I mean, the fathers of the church, what Scripture teaches us is that Christ came to give life and to give it more abundantly, right? Christ came to give us this sweet wine of life,
Yeah.
right? And that is not a bad thing. Life is meant to have that sharing of pleasure, that sharing of sweetness with and communion with God, right?
Right.
So pleasure is actually inherent to our human experience. But it's also broken, and because it's broken, it means that things that we consider to be pleasurable, that we're sort of allured by, end up being painful because they leave us empty or broken, or they're unhealthy or something like that. So we have this interesting experience where we're drawn by something that seems pleasurable but then ends up putting us into a lot of pain, and conversely we're sort of repelled by or repulsed by painful experiences that actually could potentially lead us into pleasure. And I think that's important for us to examine whenever we're talking about things like sickness or and we always have to talk about this with a great deal of sobriety and not kind of too philosophically and things like that, because again, we can philosophize about this all day long, but then next day fall into an intense anxiety attack or something like that, or and all of a sudden it's like, no, this is not helping at all, this is not a gift, this is just total suffering. And but I think we do have to say that that there are things in life that are painful, that are not necessarily going to either be permanently painful, or that are not necessarily quote unquote bad.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not easy, right? I mean, it's not, it's not a topic that, when you're going through whatever is painful, you're not happy about it.
Right.
But I think the attitude to always have that, whatever doesn't kill you.
Right, sure.
But I mean, but like, that's not even if it does, think about it. I mean, the martyrs are a great testament to, even if it kills you,
right,
what can you do to me? Because that's what they said to the people who were about to kill them. They said, "Go ahead."
Sure.
There
was a sense of kind of resolve.
Well, yeah, because this isn't the end,
mm-hmm.
and I have no anxiety over whether or not my life will end,
mm-hmm.
because they knew that the kingdom of God was the ultimate, So.
Well, it seems like such a lofty.
Well, yeah, the way they write those stories always sounds very like they weren't afraid at all.
Right.
Right. Whenever you read the lives of the martyrs, it's always
Sure.
like, yeah, they were perfectly fine with it. Go ahead, kill me. That's always how they wrote it.
Yeah, but
they might have felt anxiety. They might have.
I'm sure they felt anxiety, but in that state of maybe grace or communion with God or something like that, there was a courage. There was a a peace maybe that they received as a that as a gift that allowed them to you know, experience those things. So, you know, I mean, having this sense of a martyric resolve, a martyric courage to not see everything that is uncomfortable or painful as inherently bad, but to be kind of completely scorned.
Yeah, because I think that everything can lead us to, everything can lead to something good. Even the worst thing imaginable, which I don't want to imagine.
Right.
It can in the spiritual world can result, you know, in other words, no matter what you're struggling with, you can use that for achieving the greatest goal, which is a spiritual relationship with God.
Sure.
So
yeah, and
so having the anxiety, and in this case, the gift of it is that we all need a cross to some extent. I mean, we all need a cross to bear. So if your cross is anxiety, then there you go. That's your ticket to the kingdom of God in a certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like who I was talking to somebody about, you know, this person's wife. Not that they were a bad person, but you know, they weren't Orthodox, and so there was a bit of a friction. The husband was Orthodox. The wife wasn't Orthodox, and I remember it was actually my father. He goes, if he can bear through that, that's his way to get to the kingdom of God.
Sure.
You know, he can patiently bear through that sorrow that person has. My whole family, I'm the only one who is Orthodox. All my children are not.
Right.
You know, so yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, being
so
able
life
to
is a
accept,
martyrdom.
Right, accept the experience as a gift.
Yeah.
Insofar as it leads us to a deeper sense of life, but it's with that necessary prerequisite of I think what your father wisely pointed out is like, if he's able to do this, right? And it's not even a matter of saying, well, of like shaming someone and saying, well, are you able to do it? No, that's not the point. The point is we have to know our measure. Yeah. And you know, each one of us has been given a certain kind of level of strength, level of kind of fortitude on one level or another. Some people have fortitude in one area of life and not as much in another area, you know, vice versa. And so kind of like understanding our measure and understanding how much we can push, and to understand that there are degrees of pushing too. It's like, well, you can't love your enemies, you know. Well, then the next step, as Father Zacharias of Essex talks about, is like, well, at least can you do the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you can't love your enemies, you could at least do that, right? You could at least try to treat people as you'd want to be treated.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, all right, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of what can't I do, but what
you don't
can I
have
do?
to climb Everest.
You don't have to climb Everest. You could just climb
a nearby hill.
Yeah. You know.
and if that nearby hill is what you need, that's what you need.
Yeah, or maybe what you need is a little dose of humility and recognizing that you can't climb Everest.
That's
You know?
Exactly.
You can only climb the little hill. So maybe, you know, as much as a martyric, you know, experience might be good in sort of an ideal sense, maybe the good thing is just being able to, you know, here's something to have the humility to listen to your doctor and take that pill.
Absolutely.
You know?
Right. Don't not take it because you want to be a martyr.
Right. And honestly, you know, that can be a tough thing for us as Orthodox Christians, you know, because I think there is this sense of like, well, we're called to this life of denial and this life of following Christ, and that Christ, quote unquote, should give us the grace to overcome these things. And, you know, perhaps, I'm not saying this from a point of like, I know this for a fact, but just kind of thinking out loud, perhaps, you know, part of the reason why we haven't been given the strength to overcome these things with the grace of God is for our humility. In other words, if I did overcome it, even if somehow I believed it was because of the grace of God, maybe it would give me this sense of kind of self-assurance that I somehow am able to attract the grace of God. Yeah. And by humbling me in this way of saying, no, you're not strong enough for this, and you just need to take care of yourself on a human level. Seek out help. You are just like everybody else.
Yeah.
You're just as human as the guy over there.
Yeah, and some people get discouraged by the, I've heard it before. They get discouraged by the saints, which should be the total opposite. You should be encouraged by the saints.
Right.
The only reason that they, a lot of them went through a lot of struggle, a lot of pain.
Right.
We shouldn't see their gifts that God gave them as like, oh, why didn't I get those gifts?
Right. Right.
Well, everybody is where they're at.
Right.
And God gives everybody what they need. So if Paisios received this much, it's because that's as much as he could take.
Right.
He didn't walk on water. Well, maybe he could, I don't know. No, I've never heard a story where he did. But I remember, when people would come to him and they would bow in front of him, he would, he'd pick them up and stop them. He was scared of that sort of thing. And not only that, but there were maybe periods of time where the grace of God was very much inside of him, and he would play the fool.
Right.
He'd play a fool for Christ, and he would pretend like, and he'd start telling jokes, and not only, he'd be animated, he'd jump up on his, a chair and act out the scene, and some bishop from Cyprus, who wasn't a bishop at the time, wasn't a priest or anything, or a monk, that was the first time he met him, and he said, this guy is insane. This person is a lunatic, and everybody took him to be a saint.
Right.
And as they were leaving, they went to kiss his hand. Actually, they asked him, give us a word, tell us something good, because he hadn't told them anything spiritually helpful up to that point. He goes, do prostrations or something. I don't remember, something basic.
Right.
And they go, oh, okay, thank you. And by the time the last person had kissed his hand, suddenly the entire area filled with just grace, just God's presence. And in the moment that happened, the elder goes, okay, go, quickly, leave. And he went off, and they were like, it's described like we were like drunkards, like we were laughing and falling in the bushes and running. We were sprinting back to our monastery where we were staying the night. Yeah. Why did I bring all that up? Because that was in a way that was almost Paisios' cross to bear, so that he wouldn't fall to vain. What's it called? Being vainglory, pride. Mm-hmm. So no matter what you do, you're going to have your cross, even if you're endowed with the actual presence of God. Yeah. You're always going to have. It's interesting.
There is this fear that I have of thinking that maybe what we're talking about as far as this approach is partially even like in thinking about the saints and things like that is justifying a certain behavior on my part, I guess you could say, that is
you're referring to like a we're not like guilt almost, like we're not doing what they're doing exactly.
Yeah. Right. Or that this is just a way of justifying my lack of.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. That's it's something that gets me too. So it's
right.
So it's like one of those things I think about too, because I technically know what I should be doing,
Right.
but I'm not doing it.
Right.
You know, and I know all this stuff.
Right.
I'm still not doing it.
Right.
But I think at the same time, not everybody's called to be a monk or a priest or. I mean, like even a priest. I mean, as much as everybody can do.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's.
It's complex.
It is complex, and just not really understanding what's at the. What's at the kind of heart of it, and and how to deal with it.
Well, I think it was in the movie Ostrov, where at the end they asked him. It's a Russian movie. If you haven't seen it, Ostrov means the island.
It's a great movie.
It's a very good movie. Yeah. So at the end, he's passing away, and he knows that he's dying before he is dead. Mm-hmm. He knows that he knows the day, so he's made his own coffin. He's laying in it, and he's laying in his own coffin.
Right.
And this monk who was a young monk and kind of always gave him a hard time because the main character who's in the coffin, he kind of gives him a hard time. He plays pranks on him, trying to guide him, but at the same time, the young monk, who's considered like has a high rank in a sense. He's a helper to the abbot, and he's whatever, and he doesn't respect him. Doesn't respect the main character. So at the end, though, I guess he kind of comes to his senses, and he asks him, "What should I do?" And I don't know where they pulled this from, but the main character replies, "Just try not to sin too much." And I don't know where they got that from,
yeah.
But it's so simple, and I think that is part of all of this. Just try not to sin too much.
Yeah, it's such an otherworldly perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so incredibly encouraging and so incredibly consoling that it's like, this can't be from humans.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's so, because even when, you get wrapped up into this kind of like cycles of like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Even from a spiritual or religious standpoint, it's like I should be doing my prayers in this way, or I should be doing more, living out this kind of life, and that all seems right.
Yeah,
it all seems true in the sense that like all of these oughts, all of these shoulds, right, are, they're good things in and of themselves, right? They're good things, but this spirit of like constantly berating yourself and constantly kind of like straining to fix the problem that is is so antithetical to this perspective of just like, it's gonna be all right, like
and I've seen that a lot, not a lot, but I've seen that in, I've seen it in Greek circles, like I've seen it online on posts, spiritual memes, I guess you could call them, or whatever you might want to call them, where, well, but actually not just, like, you hear, like, certain Christian groups, it's our podcast, Protestants, who are like, well, he died for your sins, what have you done?
Oof, yeah.
So then there's, like, a guilt. Well, you don't do anything. He went on a cross. Well, what do you want me to do? Go back in time and kill someone, have the Romans crucify me? I mean, like, what? Yeah. So I think it, I don't know. I think it's just do the best you can.
Right.
And do try best you can where you are. And I'm preaching to myself now.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
Yeah. Where you are, the state of being that you're in right now, try your best. Never forget God and death.
Mm-hmm. Right. Sure.
Sounds morbid, but that's true.
No. It's
never forget God and death, because death will come, and God does exist, and He is.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It is.
I think this is one of our best ones.
It's a good one. It's got something in it.
All right. Shall we lock it up? I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm so tired. All right. Well, We hope you enjoyed this episode of An Imperfect Podcast, and follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, and of course on YouTube. Watch our videos, and we're under the same name everywhere you go, TrisagionFilms. And I hope you all have a wonderful day or night or whatever time it is.
Take care.